Hey everyone, and welcome back. So it's Monday, it's time for Reacts. But of course, we are still doing it with geography. So we are reacting to a GeoGuessr legend that is Zigzag. Now, Zigzag has brought out a video where he's looking at who is the best player of 2024. Now, obviously, most people are just going to go, well, it's Blinky, right? And maybe that is who he said. But obviously, there's a lot of different arguments about not moving, about the different kind of styles they have within the World Championships and everything else besides. And I don't know what he's taken into account, but it should be a fun watch. Thank you, everyone that's been having a go at my play-alongs and everything, by the way. I don't think I did as well this time as I did last time with the play-alongs. I think from what I've seen so far, those that have taken part in last week's play-along have thoroughly thrashed me. So, yeah. Hopefully we'll get something a little bit better in the coming weeks. I might actually be able to get at least second in my own play-alongs. I don't know. But anyway, hopefully you're going to enjoy this. And let's see what Zigzag thinks about 2024's GeoGuessr Pros.
What's good, everyone? It's Zigzag here. Welcome back to another GeoGuessr video. Great to have you back on the channel today, and welcome to my top 10 players of 2024.
Top 10.
It's
okay.
now 2025, so we can look back on the year.
That's been an interesting one, because off the top of my head, can I name 10 potentially like top players in the world? Probably not. That's really sad because I watched the World Championships. I mean, if you give me a moment, give me a bit, I could probably get there. But off the top of my head, straight away going top 10 players, I couldn't. I'll give you 5. But again, is this going to be top in skill, top in a type of skill? Like non-moving NMPZ, Zigzag's probably top, right? He's probably at least 1 or 2, but in overall, he fell down because of Senegal. Senegal is his downfall. So,
year that's passed, I would call it the year that GeoGuessr truly became an esport. But surprisingly enough, because there were less tournaments outside of the World Cup this year, I actually found it harder to compile a top 10. Regardless, we're going to start at 10, go through to 1. In the middle, I'll give some honourable mentions. And just one more thing to say before we get into it. I'm waiting, no moving. Can
I get an honourable mention, Zigzag? I mean, I'm not that entertaining and I'm not very good, but at least I play it. Come on. I'm helping the community survive.
And NMPZ higher than moving, because outside of World Cup, in the circles I move in, moving is just less relevant. So though there are very...
Okay, so now we're getting down to the specifics. I know I'm stopping a lot, but, you know, I think this needs to be discussed more in this. That's a big one, because... So for me, when I've interacted with this, landscapes, NMPZ is generally easier for me. Generally, in anything else that's meta, moving is where I need to have that. I need to be able to move when it comes to like urban areas and things like that to see something. So yeah, there's a definite difference, and I think that's where you have the separation between amateurs, very amateur, like those that play regularly, and pros, because there's that kind of level of which you're going to want to interact with. Now, if I'm playing on an urban area or anything like that, that isn't just a landscape, I want the moving and I want the time. If you give me a landscape only, then, and I mean literally just landscape only, not the one I did last week, but just landscape only, then generally NMPZ I can do pretty well on those I've shown in the past. But it is a big difference as to what you're going to be finding there.
Very many skilled moving mains. I will not be including them in the list. Anyway, let's get into it.
Okay. Which Blinky is a very skilled moving...
so my number 10 pick for 2024 is Kanna, a fellow countryman of mine. His biggest achievement for the year was winning the APAC tournament, the Asia Pacific tournament. He did so in dominant fashion, beating Angelo 3-0 to get there. He also had a decent World Cup where he placed 9th to 12th, getting eliminated by foul. And at least once or twice this year, he reached number 1 overall on Jules ranking. And spoiler, this year I'm going to be using Jules ranking a lot more than I did last year because of the introduction of all 3 modes in Jules. And trickling down from that, most pros to at least play some Jules these days, so it is much more relevant. But yeah, overall, Kanna, a very consistent player. He also evolved a lot throughout the year, heavily improving his moving skills, perhaps to the detriment of his NMPZ skills. But let's not forget that the World...
So that's why he's placing him a little lower, because he was playing more towards what is needed for the World Cup. Now, if anyone hasn't seen it, Zigzag does do a video on his issues with the World Cup. He's not defending himself for losing, simply that... he doesn't think there should be the same weighting towards moving and not moving, which I get, absolutely get, because moving gives you the ability to see a sign, a URL, a flag that can make it a lot easier than just simply being able to recognize certain things. So I understand that kind of idea. But what I will say is it's clear that a lot of players, such as Kanna, have moved towards that style of play so that they can do well in the World Championships, which is, you know.
World Cup format does benefit moving anyway, so it makes sense. My number 9 pick might be surprising to more casual viewers, but it's actually another fellow Australian, Lero. So Lero got quite unfortunate at the APAC tournament and therefore missed out at the World Cup. So this is definitely less of a results-based pick and much more of an eye test-based pick. So Lero's an extremely consistent no-moving and NPZ player, and he's been extremely high rated on duels for pretty much the entire year, maintaining around 2,000 ELO, and just like Kanna has been up to number 1 as well. As of the 1st of January, he's 5th on the NPZ leaderboard and 6th on the no-moving leaderboard, and has not played many games in the World League so far, so we'll just have to see how he goes. But
okay, so there's some definite like stability in what he's able to do. He's not just, as he said there, casual viewers. Now, myself, I'm probably a more casual viewer when it comes to things like this. I guess I'm in between. I'm an intermediate viewer. So Lero isn't as well known to me, but as he said there, he's 5th and 6th. He is in that top 10 within a specific area. So lost out of one tournament, which meant he couldn't get to the main one. But again, unlike we've just seen with our number 10, he obviously hasn't developed more into this kind of let's move into a move main so that I can get somewhere. He's sticking to what he knows best, and that's probably the reason that he's not as successful as some others, but it also means that he's worthy of a place on the list.
But yeah, perhaps a surprising pick. I think if you ask pros, though, they would agree with me that he is definitely one of the best players in the world, and so I placed him at 9.
I've just moved my camera up, by the way. I've just shrunk it because I realised I was in.
Right, coming in at number 8, we have the Spanish player Totic. Now, Totic is one of the most veteran players on this list, without a doubt, being there right since the start of the community, and he actually won the EMEA tournament this year, which is one of the most stacked tournaments of the entire year. Of course, he beat Consus to get there, and Blinky was eliminated on the other side of the bracket, so he ended up beating Kratzo in the finals. Yeah. And he wouldn't be top 10 on that alone, but he actually made it to the grand stage of the World Cup, which was very impressive, and those two feats really pushed him into the top 10 for me. Sadly, Totic declined his invite to the World League, so it's unlikely that we're going to see him in the World Cup 2025. That being said, it was a very fitting year for Totic to finish.
I wonder what that is. If anyone knows, by the way, why he may have declined that. It seems like a strange move. You'd have thought you'd want to be in the World Leagues and be doing that. And they're on at the moment. If you check over the GeoGuessr channel, which definitely do. I think a lot of people forget that the GeoGuessr kind of has its own channel, separate from the World Cup. But if anyone knows why that is, has he made a statement? Is there a particular reason he hasn't done it? It'd be interesting to know why.
Finish on this year with, frankly, his best ever year of results GeoGuessr-wise. So my number 7 pick this year is Consus, and may I say that the next 7 were definitely the clear top 7. For number 8 to 10, I kind of struggled to come up with exactly who I wanted. I think those ones are much more debatable. Everyone Consus and above is in kind of their own league, and these guys were definitely closer together and a bunch above
That's like picking your best
Consus
footballer,
was my top player of 2023.
The top are always
in
easy to fix.
He continued to show a lot of strength without getting the results he probably wanted. He was top 8 in EMEA, and then again top 8 in the GeoGuessr World Cup. He's also having a flying start to the World League, currently 10-0. We'll see how that pans out over the rest of the league, but you'd have to think.
When you're in the World League and the only person that's anywhere, like the only person that can get above you is Blinky, yeah, you did well.
I think he is very likely to qualify for one of the 16 positions in the GeoGuessr World Cup 2025. And overall, you could call Consus one of the most consistent players in the world. It is very rare that you see him make a
I'm still
mistake,
considering trying to
he's just a measured, cool-headed.
I've been told that there are tournaments that are within my
Consus bounce
my
back,
skill bracket.
and indeed, probably many people on their own list would put Consus even higher. Just the way I place things here. Definitely Consus should still be proud of his 2024, and I want to see him bounce back next year. All right, my number 6 player of the year is Shimmy from Slovenia. Shimmy is also bumped down a few spots. I believe he was 3rd last year on my list. And yeah, this also might be a little bit controversial because Shimmy is a bit inactive as of the end of 2024. He hasn't been playing too much in the last 4 months. That being said, like Lero, this is kind of an eye test one. I still believe that Shimmy is, if not the, one of the best NMPZ players in the world, certainly top 3. He has set some of the most impressive world records. I am still, after a lot of grinding, yet to beat a Shimmy world record. And yeah, this is just a player for whom it's a shame he doesn't play in the World Cup.
Should I try and go towards any of them? I mean, I will never beat them. But would it be entertaining to see me fuck it up a lot of times? Maybe.
He doesn't like the format. He doesn't like the moving aspect, as far as I know. So yeah, fair enough on that, I would say. Hopefully we see him on a LAN environment one day. But I would say even without significant placements this year, he is still my 6th best player of the year. And in addition to that, he still is the player in the world with the most games completed, having completed over 50,000 games. Very impressive stuff. All right, before we get to number 5, let's talk about some honorable mentions, and I'll give a quick sentence about each player on the list.
Who we've got from honorable?
Firstly, Gingy, who won the Americas tournament and has been extremely consistent in third-party tournaments, so the smaller tournaments that happen on the side in the community. Definitely an NMPZ no-move player, not so strong on the moving side of things. Has hurt him in the World Cup, for example. Definitely a player, though, I have a lot of respect for. Castrola, aka B89, is definitely someone else who many people would have had on the list. He had a high ELO peak at the start of the year, but has since had a less active second half of the year, and is currently going quite well in the World League without being a front runner. We all know Debre. Debre had a little bit of an underwhelming year this year considering his skill level. I definitely think we could see Debre in the top 10 next year. I think with Debre, it all depends on how much he dedicates himself because he is very strong on all 3 game modes and has a habit of beating me in the World Cup, which he has done twice now. Kron is...
Love that. Has a habit of beating me in the World Cup. It's in that twice. There was... Zigzag's a very cheerful and happy person. I feel there was some venom in that of like, God damn it, I'm gonna fucking beat you this year.
A young Hong Kongese player, hasn't therefore been able to play in the World Cups. Definitely someone who was very cracked, but I think has stopped grinding quite so much at the moment. But Chrome would definitely just show up to these third-party tournaments and destroy them every now and again, so have to give him a shout out. Moo is someone who missed out on the World Cup this year, but has since had a huge rise to being a top player, and is currently going very well in the World League.
I've come across Moo before.
Not top 10 this year, but definitely might be next year, I think. Orlando had a big rise to GeoGuessr fame this year, also making it to the top 4 of the World Cup was absolutely insane. A great result for him. I definitely think with a bit more consistent.
Orlando had some surprising kind of games in the World Cup as well. Surprising to me, his play and yeah, the way he took on some of those rounds were interesting. They weren't as consistent as some of the others, but he just got that pinpoint when he needed it to be.
He could be top 10 next year. Barry the Bee is a really young player from the US. He's got a high Jules elo a lot of the time, but not too much else to his name. So if you're going Jules alone, he might be top 10. However, with the results-based system, not really possible. Same applies for Yuria, who is a teenager from Japan. Exactly the same deal as Barry the Bee.
Will I ever be on the honorable mention?
Arguably a top 10 NMPZ player in the world at the moment. However, also doesn't really have the other results to back it up. Also, being Russian, not able to play in the World Cup as it stands, I believe. My second last honorable mention is my good friend Finbar. Definitely had quite a breakout year in the pro scene this year, doing well in EMEA and decently at the World Cup. He's also quite high ELO, however didn't quite have the results to justify putting him on the list. And my final honorable mention would be me. Now I did do really well.
I feel like he's I feel like he's underselling himself there. But then I haven't seen previous years, so maybe in previous years he's put himself on the top 10. But is he being a little bit too humble there? I feel like, I don't know, that there are of course better players than the ones we see on YouTube, but Zigzag had an incredibly good year. It's just that he made the mistakes at the World Cup. But we've seen him have a very good year. He's also, see, I'm in my head almost marking it with other things in mind as well, I guess, which is entertainment value as well as anything else. And it does feel like he should be on there. I'm not saying he should be at the top, but feels like he should be in there somewhere. I don't know. So it seems like an underselling. I don't know. Let me know. By the way, let me know what you think, and let me know what your top 10 are. I know some of you guys are very, very active in the community. Obviously, some of you are more kind of in and out like I am, but some of you are very active and you know, take part in things. Let me know whether you think he should be in there like I do. And also just let me know what your top 10 are. Do you agree with Zigzag? Do you think some of his picks are weird? Let me know.
In terms of world records this year. However, I weighted them a lot less because Plonker has been a lot less active recently. I would say there could be an argument to put me at the bottom of the top 10, but personally, I didn't think it was justified this year. Guys, fingers crossed, I can confidently put myself on there next year. But let's get on to number 5.
I think the argument to put you at the lower end of the top 10 is there, personally.
My number 5 pick is the British player Geo. Now, if you're a World Cup watcher, this is someone you may have never heard of. However, Geo is the #1 rated player in the world in terms of overall rating by over 150 points at this stage, which is kind of crazy. In addition to that, he's the #1 rated on No Moving and on NMPZ. So overall, he's had a huge year on Jules. This is a similar story to Barry the Bee and Uria, except Geo is just better, and therefore basically just on minor tournaments and Jules stats alone has earned himself a top 10 spot. Okay, my number 4 pick. Now, this one also may come as a surprise, but I'm actually going to go with Bad at GeoGuessr. Now, Bag actually qualified for the World Cup through the wildcards and then got in the group of death with me. Now, we both went out in the group stage.
This is the first year he could do it, right? I'm pretty sure Bad at GeoGuessr was too young the year before. Like, he could have qualified the year before, but he wasn't old enough to be in it. I'm pretty sure that's right. So this is the first year he could do it. So there's also potential nerves, as well as being in that bracket. I mean, Jesus Christ. And that's why I also put think Zigzag is underselling himself, because of where he was in the World Cup, and where Bad at GeoGuessr was. It's like, or Bad at Geo, like, that was the table you did not want to be in. You did not want to be in there. It was, you know, it was just a bad placing.
Bag is so high on the list. He's had an incredibly dominant year in Jules, where he's been top 3 basically the entire year long. He's also top 3 in multiple Plonker record categories, and is basically a top 3 NMPZ player in the world, I would say, pretty easily. And yeah, guys, I think if the World Cup format was a bit different, we could easily have seen Bag be top 4 in the entire thing. In fact, many people had him going top 4 before the World Cup actually started, but the group of death happened to him, and he unfortunately was eliminated early. He wouldn't have been in other groups, in my opinion, but that's how it goes. And Bag is
I think he would have done a lot better in the other groups. But that second group for the World Cup was not one you want to be.
My number 3 player of the year, and I can tell you this guy was nowhere on my radar last year when I made the list, but it is of course MK Person. Now, MK famously made it through the wildcards and then all the way to the World Cup Grand Final, and he very nearly beat Blinky on NMPZ, which would have crowned him the world champion of GeoGuessr. That would have been quite an insane story.
I mean, is he ever playing that? I don't know. I watched the World. I reacted to the World Cup final. It felt a lot more dominant from Blinky than I think Zigzag is making out there. Don't get me wrong. There were some moments where MK really did kind of say, "Hey, you're not alone in knowing what you're doing." But I don't think the way he's made it there was that it was a much closer fight for the final. I don't think it was. I think it was very clear from the outset that Blinky had it. But MK did put up a fight. And I think that is how I would say it there. But, MK definitely put up a fight. He showed that he was not just a flash in the pan kind of thing.
Regardless, it still is an insane story that an 18-year-old can come through from playing on his phone just a year and a half earlier. All the way
I didn't know that about him.
One of the top 3.
Oh no, wait, no, I think that they did say that on the thing.
Well done on
playing your phone top 3. I didn't even know you could play GeoGuessr on your phone.
MK has been consistently in the top 3 of Jules as well, holding #1 for quite some time. He definitely has a lot of holes in his gameplay. He's not very good at moving. He's not very good at small countries. But what he lacks there, he has an extreme consistency
because they tend to be in Europe.
Countries and also very quick guessing, which often throws his opponents. And that's why MK is number 3.
Radu,
my number 2 pick, and I really was unsure who I wanted to go with 2 and 1, which order I would pick, but my number 2 pick this year is Radu C. So Radu was representing US instead of Romania this year, and therefore, because he couldn't play in the Americas qualifier, had to go through the wildcards as well, which of course he did with relative ease over in Andorra. And when it came to the World Cup group stage, he was absolutely destroying. However, on the big stage, he had an upset loss to Foul. Now, you could definitely argue that Radu played better in the series, but regardless, Foul was the winner, and so Radu, while many people's favorites to win the whole thing, did not make it to the grand finals, unfortunately. That being said, the rest of the year was punctuated by Radu's success.
Always was the one for me, but Radu was
half of the year as the #1 rated player in the
I
world.
would have bad Geo
the best player in the world at the no moving mode as well. And Radu is of course the best player in the world at multiple countries, if not top 3, which makes him very formidable when you roll a Ukraine or a Bangladesh in a duel against him. But yeah, along with my #1 pick, Radu is the most complete player in the world, and therefore highly to be feared in the World Cup format, and we really got to watch out for him at the next World Cup, which, based on his World League performances so far, he will almost certainly qualify for.
Now, #1, is it going to be the obvious one? Yeah, okay. Had to be.
And my #1 pick of the year is, of course, Blinky, our world champion. I decided to stick with tradition here and pick Blinky over Radu, just like I picked Consus over Blinky last year. And yeah, Blinky had a stellar year this year, unfortunately missing out on the win, losing to his French compatriot in EMEA. And at that stage, I was thinking, okay, maybe Blinky's year won't quite go the way it did last year. However, after months of solid grinding, we rolled up to the World Cup, and he was my prediction to actually win the whole thing. The reason being because, as I said, Blinky is the most complete player in the world, along with Radu. He's extremely good, in fact, the best at moving, and then his no moving and NMPZ are definitely top 10, if not top 5, if not higher. So yeah.
The one thing I did notice about Blinky more than other players is there's an emotional leveling. So when like people would try and push him, okay, did work a couple of times by MK in the final. But generally, when people would try to push Blinky throughout the tournament, he'd be like, okay, so I've got a few more seconds. And instead of just, what a lot of people would do, would take half of that and then suddenly just, okay, it's going to be there. He'd still be looking to pinpoint the exact road. And he'd be like, no, this time doesn't matter. I've got what I need. Very, very calm and collected player that I saw.
Yeah, Blinky, a super smart player, the complete package, and a deserving World Cup 2024 winner. I definitely loved the storyline of him going on to win the World Cup. It was very poetic. I was super happy for him, as you guys would have seen if you watched that. I was jumping around with Kodiak and Lenley. I do think it has to be said, the World Cup format does heavily benefit Blinky with the inclusion of moving, but at this stage, the GeoGuessr devs are definitely set on this format, so them's the rules. If you can't beat Blinky, you can't beat Blinky, and that's why he is #1 on my list this year. Okay, so let's talk about my bold predictions from last year and who I think will make the top 10 next year. This is my list. You can see who made the top 10 from my list last year. Karania and Lero, the two moving into the top 10 from this list, but many others such as Antec, definitely world-class players who kind of stopped grinding quite as much. Same goes for Kron really, so definitely could have been top 10 if they kept playing. And so as for the people who've never made top 10 on my lists, but I think might next year, here is my list. I got Kron again, Moo, Barry the Bee, Uria, Dev, Kent, who I think is quite underrated in the World League at the moment, Finbar, Captain, who's a big unknown in the World League, seems to be playing really well so far, Harrier, and Lenley. There are definitely very many others who I could have included here, but I think at least some of those will make the top 10 next year, in addition to the people who I already had in the top 7 this year, who I really think were quite interchangeable. So sorry if you disagreed with any of the order there. But that is it for the video. Let us see how I go in terms of these predictions. I'm very keen to see how they pan out. And on a happy note, I think that the GeoGuessr esports scene is going really well. I'm not always happy with the decisions of the devs or the format, but I am definitely still grateful for the opportunity and very happy to be part of it. So let's see if I can also make the top 10 next year. I would love to. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video all the way to the end. Have a great new year, and I'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, I mean, I think Zigzag should have been on that list. I think I would have put him 8th. I think I'd put him in 8. I think he could have definitely done better. I expected him to get through the group of death. He obviously didn't. A very notable loss with Senegal that I think that just kind of then sent him into a certain pattern. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I think a couple of those I wouldn't necessarily agree with. I think next year, I think that on the top 10, Finbar and Moo, I agree with of the sideline there that will be going forward. I think those are the ones that I've come across myself. Obviously, my knowledge on this is far less than a lot of you out there. So please tell me whether whether you agree with that, what you think. And like I said, please give me your top 10. It'd be interesting to see what you guys think as being the top 10. Because obviously this is from Zigzag's perspective, from what he's seen, and also from what he likes about the game. As he said, he's not a massive fan of the format all the time. And I understand that. I understand that as a player that's like that. And I kind of get it as well. Like, if there's a specific kind of style, you do have it in other sports and esports and things like that. There's a separation, which I don't see any problem with. He said before about having a moving separate tournament, or even having like maybe a separation of it within the tournaments or the World Cup itself, but having it there at the moment is meaning that a lot of insanely good players are not coming through because they just don't play moving. And if you don't play moving, you're kind of screwed. So I understand that from him. But do you agree with his top 10 because of that obvious bias that's coming through there? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you on Wednesday for, well, one of your suggestions. See you then.